So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and we go from the confined, cramped hallways of Moria to the wide open spaces of the ETTENMOORS. So of course the ETTENMOORS, it's going to be another 3v3 field battle actually, and the ETTENMOORS, obviously the main feature behind it is going to be the trees, so keeping track of everything that's going on underneath the tree cover. It's not quite as dense as some other maps, but you do still need to sort of keep tabs on everything that's happening. After all, if you lose track of a few infantry units or the odd unit of cavalry, particularly if they end up being high tier lancers or knights, it could end up being a big problem for you. But of course the trees can also work to conceal the enemy as well, so you do need to keep track of that. So it is a rather wide open field, but it is not a flat field by any means. There are several pieces of raised terrain, a few ruins here and there, and it does look as though several of the factions have taken up a little bit more of a defensive posture, particularly on the raised ground over here. But you can also see across the way there are sort of very thick ranks of the red team as well as the blue team. So we'll start off with the blue team and with the player who sent me the replay. So if we head on up here, we will start off with DF Lister, who is going to be playing as the Witch Realm of Angmar. Obviously one of the most aggressive factions on the of all of the roster. In fact, Angmar, you would have to say, overall, the most aggressive of all the factions in the game, really. They certainly have a lot of upfront strength, both in terms of numbers, and they have some pretty strong individual elite units as well, but you of course have to temper them with some numbers, as all of the Orc factions do. It is also worth saying that because of the tree cover on this map, chances are we're going to be seeing a lot of hidden units sort of popping in throughout the battlefield, so or throughout the battle as it runs, so I won't be able to get all of them in the army compositions. I will be missing some, but we'll try and get as much as we can, at least for get an overall view of what the armies are going for. So first of all, with Angmar, we do have some Snaga. We'll be able to see Lister's hidden units, of course. The Snaga are going to be here on the front line, essentially just dying for the cause, and I believe they're going to be facing, Dol Amroth. So Dol Amroth in 0.96.1 are a little bit underwhelming, to be honest with you. They are much better in 0.97, both visually and to actually play as. They have stronger cavalry as they should, and their infantry is sort of augmented a little bit with a couple of new units and a bit of rebalancing as well. For now, though, certainly the infantry advantage you would imagine is going to be Angmar's. We of course have the Barrow Wights, which at the moment are very, very strong in, well, they're very, very difficult to kill in melee. They don't necessarily get their killing done particularly quickly, but they're very difficult to wear down in melee. That is also something that is going to be changing in 0.97. They will have half of their current hit points, and they will also be made quicker though. So the big problem currently in this patch, of course, with the Barrow Wights is the fact that Angmar are a very quick and aggressive faction to try and get into melee, but the Barrow Wights are slow to the point where, they're going to take a while to get into melee, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. They're very strong once they get there, but I do feel as though the trade-off that is going to happen, where they will gain sort of the same speed as other infantry but be made a lot less potent in melee, is the way to go. They will still be quite difficult to hack and slash their way through in melee, because that is of course the point of the Barrow Wights overall, to be a sort of melee tar pit. But they won't be as good at absorbing damage in 0.97, but they will be a little bit quicker. So there is that to look forward to. For the time being, though, we have the 0.96 version of the Barrow Wights. We also have some Goblin Trackers just in behind them. Angmar's skirmish line leaves a lot to be desired, especially, again, in 0.97. The Angmar skirmish line will become, generally speaking, worse overall. Purely because at the moment, cheap, low-tier archers are the way to go in 0.96, because they're very easy to get cost efficiency with. If you sit back and try and skirmish with sort of a very, very quantity-heavy archer line, you're probably going to have a bad time. That will not really be the case in 0.97. The more expensive archers, particularly those that are sort of more heavily armed and more designed to be able to absorb pressure, will be much, much better, I'm glad to say. So units like this will still be able to perform that role of just sort of trying to wear down the enemy's ammunition, but their effectiveness at doing that will be slightly lessened, and obviously Angmar in general don't really have anything other than very low tier archers. The Goblin Trackers are the best archers they can bring, to give you an idea of how poor their skirmish line really is. Over here we have some more Guardians of Khan Doom, which are actually hidden. They do not have the armour upgrade, so again, I praise them quite a lot because of the fact that they are very resilient. As far as Orcish line infantry goes, I'm a big fan, because they give Angmar that strength at their core that they need in order to be really aggressive. Got several units of Angmar Halberds as well. Obviously the Angmar Halberds have had sort of slight makeovers ever since the vanilla game, so they have a little bit more uniqueness to them when you compare them to the likes of Mordor. And obviously an armour-piercing phalanx is always going to be nice, especially against Dol Amroth, who do have quite a lot of armour. Dol Amroth do have pikes, however, which can outrange halberds, so there is that to look at. And obviously as well, Angmar halberds are very, very weak to enemy arrow fire. The Witch Realm pikemen, meanwhile, very good pikes actually, quite similar in terms of their effectiveness to Uruk-hai pikemen or even guards of Osgiliath. But like the guards of Osgiliath, you can only have 2 before the cost increases. They don't have the armour upgrade either, so they just have their rusted armour. So yeah, you can't blanket your line with pikes in quite the same way that Isengard can as Angmar, but you can still put on a pretty decent phalanx, and obviously that can be just the thing to anchor a very aggressive push. It does look as though he's only got one sort of long line of infantry back here with some Guardians of Kharndoom on either side and then pikes and halberds in the middle. Over here, well back here we have the General, which is actually the Witch Realm Hammer Guard, which oftentimes you see the Black Guard because they are shielded of course, maybe a little bit safer, but the Hammer Guard naturally are going to be more damaging. Very, very strong AP troops, arguably the strongest bodyguard, well, arguably the strongest armour-piercing infantry general's bodyguard that there is in the game, arguably. Again, there's quite a lot of competition in those terms as well, like the Tharbad Warhammers from Cardolan or the Witch Realm Enslavers from Rudau, but the Hammer Guard, very, very strong, and against Dol Amroth as well, armoured troops going to be very effective if they can get into melee without being charged by Dol Amroth cavalry. But if there is Dol Amroth cavalry, then the Witch Realm Inquisitors and the Witch King himself will be here to try and deal with that, and obviously they're going to be supported by some Warg Riders. The Warg Riders, of course, can be pretty vulnerable to enemy arrow fire once their hit points are gone because of their very low armour, but the Witch Realm Inquisitors, some of the finest melee knights in the game. It'll be interesting to see if we have a battle of the Titans between themselves and the Haven Guard. Meanwhile, moving into the middle, which is where a lot of the trees are at, we technically have Rohan, but almost all of their troops are hidden. So it gives you an idea of most of the troops that we can expect to see. So there's some Riddermark Spearmen, Eowyn Shield Maidens you can see there. So all of their infantry. It does look as though they've gone for a slightly more quality approach. There's not a lot of blue on the radar here to indicate they've gone for a huge bulk of infantry. But we do have 007, who is going to be playing as Rohan. And he does have the Sons of Yor, which is a General's Bodyguard unit. So again, Lance Knights, pretty much the pride and joy of the Rohan Cav Force, the centre of what they do. Knights, of course, pretty much good at everything. They can charge and crush infantry, they can get stuck in the cav fight as well, which Rohan do need quite a lot of the time. They do need their knights to be proactive in the cav fight because they only have a few other melee cav options that they can genuinely bring. Most of their cav line is lancers, after all. But Sons of Yorn, very, very strong units. That's all for Rohan. We will see them as the battle unfolds, I'm sure. And then we have Correggan, who is going to be playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He's got the Bolgs Champions back here, which is not the General's Bodyguard, actually. But again, these Wargs, not quite as strong as either the Melkor's Chosen or the Champions of the White Hand. But they are, as far as the Misty Mountains go, generally speaking, they are slightly lower quality than the other Orcs, but they can compensate for that by bringing just more of what the other Orcs can bring. Obviously, the Goblins, very much quantity focused. We do have some White Rook Fearmongers, so that's going to be more AP there. We've got some heavy Goblin Crossmen up on the hill as well. I think I'm losing my voice, which is really unfortunate. I hope that it holds out for the remainder of this replay. But the heavy Goblin Crossbow is another very good thing to bring us to Misty Mountains because of the stopping power that crossbows offer you. The General is actually in the Blackback Mountain Berserkers, which means they cannot hide. You know, the Blackback Berserkers, when you have the General in the unit, it removes the ability to hide from the unit even if they had that. So the Blackback Berserkers will be very visible, which does obviously open them up to being skirmished down. And Correggan generally goes for a layered approach with a lot of numbers and a lot of just the ability to absorb a lot of pressure over the course of a longer battle. The Misty Mountains are pretty ideal for that in the current patch, to be honest. You know, with all of the very numerous archers, they can bring a couple of units of heavy Goblin Archers, a couple of units of Goblin Infantry, just, well, a unit of Goblin Infantry and a unit of Goblin Archers, so they're going to be able to skirmish. They've got a lot of ability to absorb pressure in melee as well, with heavy Goblin Spears holding the front with the AP. Although based on the fact they're fighting Harad, AP is not really going to be terribly useful. And we also have some heavy Goblin Halberds and more heavy Goblin Halberds. So if you look over here, this is sort of a little valley area that potentially Correggan could move into to try and hold and sort of retreat if he wants. The ETTENMOORS, after all, it's not the grassy plain, which I'm very grateful for. I find the grassy plain so painfully boring after seeing it so many times. But let's get on to the red team now. We shall start off with new player 195. We've got, well, he's playing as Harad, of course. Southron Archers on the front. Obviously, you know, they may have wooden armour, but overall, not bad in a skirmish fight. But I would say, based on the amount of archers that the Misty Mountains has brought, Harad are going to have to make some decisions pretty early on whether they're going to be aggressive against the Misty Mountains or simply cycle themselves over to try and face someone else. We shall see. As Harad are wont to do in 0.96, however, they have several units of Haradrim Spearmen. Very, very cheap, of course, quite numerous as well. Not very good in melee, of course, individually, but that's not really the purpose behind them. The purpose is to have a lot of numbers on the field, a lot of engagements that you can take. And he's also got several units of Dismounted Serpent Guard, which are perhaps a little bit underrated. You know, Harad, generally speaking, do go for the sort of very low tier Haradrim archers and Haradrim spears, and then augment that with their very high tier stuff, so Demons of the Desert, Champions of Nafarat, Trollmen, that sort of thing, Mumakil, potentially. But the dismounted Serpent Guard are pretty much, you know, they are of the same sort of quality as like Uruk-hai infantry. So they can do a pretty decent job in melee, to be honest with you. They've got a fair amount of killing power for line infantry, but their shield value is not quite as high because their shields are smaller than most other line infantry units, and their armour is not quite as thick either. So generally speaking, while line infantry is pretty good at sort of absorbing range pressure, Serpent Guard slightly less so. They will still do that job, but not quite as efficiently as something like Gondor infantry, for example. And then back here we do have some Muhard warriors as well, which obviously, again, lower armour even than the Serpent Guard. Generally speaking, not as good as the Serpent Guard, but more numerous, and they will still do that line infantry job. They actually have a better shield value as well, but very poor armour values as all the Muhard units have, because they go into battle shirtless. We've got some Serpent Guards, so some swift moving lancers. They need to be careful with Rohan on the field, as well as the Bolgs champions. We've got some Trollmen, of course, and we have Muhard Beast Hunters, so that's some Javelins there. Some Berserkers, so that's more AP troops. Southron Pikes, I believe the only AP pike in the game. They obviously suffer in terms of very low stats, however. And then we also have some more Beast Hunters back there, so that's pretty much the entirety of the Haradrim army. Perhaps more of a quantity approach here, which will actually mesh well against the Misty Mountains who they are facing, because obviously there's a lot of goblins they have to go up against. We'll see if Harad have got the quality to actually hack and slash their way through all of the goblins, however. We have Orc Peon, who's going to be playing as Isengard, so very appropriate name. You can see that the Isengard Warg Riders look a little bit different from their other contemporaries from the other Orc factions. So some Wargs here. Obviously the Bolg champions will eat them for breakfast, but they're still a pretty good unit to sort of help Harad out with, just in case the Bolg champions go a little bit too gung-ho into the Haradrim lines. We have some Dunlanding Berserkers, which do have that anti-cavalry bonus, which is nice. Obviously, right across the way we have Rohan against Isengard in the middle, so the Dunlanders will have plenty of motivation to swing those axes with all their fury. We'll see though. I mean, Rohan obviously, they don't want to lead their cavalry too long around the Isengard lines, because Isengard are very capable of zoning out cavalry fairly easily if they sort of keep their lines in shape, but they'll die just like anyone else if they have sort of undefended sections of the line. Like this, for example, the Uruk-hai infantry are right out here in front by the looks of things. Doesn't look like there's anything in front of them, so the Rohan cavalry could come charging right towards them and doing a lot of damage. Up here on the slightly elevated terrain, we do have an Isengard ballista. Most of the Rohan army, however, is hidden. They could try and snipe out the general, but until the Rohan army reveals itself, the ballista may have to go up against someone else. With the fortified position of the Misty Mountains, they may want to sort of swivel it around that way. We have the Guards of Orthanc, which is going to be the general's bodyguard today. Safe place to put them, of course, very survivable, very tanky spears. And then more Uruk-hai infantry. The rest of his army, it looks like it is hidden, so again, that is the nature of a very forested map. And then finally, up here on this hill, up on the sort of higher section of the map, we have Ariest, who is going to be playing as Dol Amroth. Quite a few players actually who I've never seen before, so that's going to be interesting. Some Tirithea Wardens who are in Shield Wall here, trying to sort of defend. This is a pretty classic example of what a new player will do as well. Sort of a very neat front line here with sort of defences, and then it's sort of curving in on itself, going for a more defensive posture perhaps, which they may need to take up. I mean, Angmar are very aggressive, of course. Doran Ernil Pikes on the front line as well. We do have the Haven Knights, we do have the Knights of the Silver Swan and the Ballista. And there's obviously some units up here as well, because we can see the stakes, so a lot more hidden units as well. There's certainly more than just this in the Dol Amroth lines. So, without further ado, let us begin. So, interesting to see how this map will work out purely because of the tree cover. A lot of units that are hidden, of course. Angmar will probably be moving forward. I can't imagine they're going to want to skirmish with Dol Amroth for too long. And it's quite obvious where Angmar are as well. The Witchram Hammer Guard are over here. They also want to be very careful that the Ballista doesn't snipe out the general. That would be a real disaster. See what's going on over here. You can see the Sons of Yul are also pulling back. So once again, both of the Ballistas on the red team are not being allowed to just sort of snipe out the enemy generals. The rest of their armies, of course, still remaining hidden. And you can see over here that Korrigan is starting to move forward some Goblin infantry. So again, going forward, sort of feeding his lower tier units once again into the enemy. We'll see how new player 195 deals with this. I mean, most of the Misty Mountains army is not super scary. The crossbows are in a very nice position. The archers are obviously going to be quite annoying, but with all of these sort of skirmishers, with a fair few ill-equipped units to deal with Harad with all of this AP, I honestly think Harad would be in a fairly good place if they just sort of charged forward, honestly, and tried to sort of overwhelm the Misty Mountains with their slightly higher quality and their slightly more favourable matchup. Meanwhile, we do see over here the Riders of the Fold are coming in. Obviously Horse Archers, pretty good Horse Archers as well. I was very critical of the Riders of the Fold back when Vanilla was still the primary 3rd age version that everyone used because they were way too expensive for what they offered, but now Horse Archers are much more useful in Reforged. They are going in here trying to get some harassment off. Unfortunately, they are going after the Uruk-hai infantry from the front, however, which all this is really going to accomplish is a few peripheral kills, yes, but the armour and shields will stand up to them just fine. There's also the Uruk-hai crossbows, and unfortunately for them, you can see the Riders of the Fold charging in there, and they were always going to run into something that was hidden eventually. They do manage to get out there before they break, but several of them died both to the crossbow volleys and to being in melee for a little bit anyway with the Dunman Berserkers. So yeah, the Riders of the Fold are going to want to get out of there pretty quickly indeed. Let's go and see what's happening up here. You can see the Barrow Wights are starting to move. You can see that Angmar in general is starting to sort of shift their position as all of the Dol Amroth archers start to open up. It's obviously a little bit difficult for the archers to see over all of this, all of these shrubs, I'm sure. The ballista is still firing, however, and I don't know what it's firing at. Possibly the Witch Realm Inquisitors, which would be a very wise target indeed. The Witch Realm Inquisitors and the Haven Guard will pretty much fight one another to a standstill, so any sort of advantage you can get will be most appreciated. Or the Barrow Wights would be another good target, because the ballista will kill them regardless of HP. There are some trolls which I actually unbelievably missed in the army composition, but they're going to be moving forward as well. Dol Amroth will probably struggle to deal with the trolls, in all honesty. Meanwhile, the Riders of the Fold still firing away, still plugging away at the Hashari Shadows this time. The Hashari Shadows moving across to try and get some of their body-piercing projectiles into play. But I don't think it's going to work out for them too well. They certainly don't want to be skirmishing with a sort of more tanky horse archer like the Riders of the Fold, so they're wisely going to fall back. Any sort of ranger, whether they're mounted or dismounted, you need to be very careful with. Wrap them in cotton wool a little bit and make sure you look after them, because in the late game they can win you the battle all on their own. It's not just sieges that rangers can be extremely effective in. Well, Corrigan is certainly not eager to move forward. I think in every battle I've seen Corrigan, they've been exceedingly passive. So again, that perhaps shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but Harad could also take advantage of that themselves by sort of siphoning over a lot of their infantry to help Isengard go through the middle. Meanwhile, we can see these Knights of the Silver Swan are charging in, and they're getting actually uninterrupted charges into the Barrow Wights, so those Barrow Wights are actually falling. Unfortunately for them, they are going to take sort of several volleys from the Goblin Archers, but the Knights of the Silver Swan have got shields, and their armour is thick enough to the point where they shouldn't lose too many unit models. When they do turn around and cycle out, however, they will be getting shot in the back, which is unfortunate, but not a single unit model falls. I know the Knights of the Silver Swan, most people aren't too impressed with them at 0.96, I would agree, honestly. They look far cooler than they actually are able to function on the field. But nonetheless, they are still Lancers, and they do still have their place. Meanwhile, these Witch Realm Pikemen are actually taking a real beating from the Ballista. I'm actually surprised that Lister is still not charging in, purely because he has... Angmar are always going to have some form of... They're going to be able to put the pressure on the Dol Amroth infantry in 0.96 especially. In 0.97, of course, Dol Amroth get their own heavy swordsman unit, which will certainly help mitigate that somewhat. But Dol Amroth's infantry in general just a little bit lacking against someone like Angmar, who can bring a lot of force, a lot of heavily armoured pressure to the field. And some Swan Knights coming over here as well. Cavalry is the area in which Dol Amroth can, of course, pile on some more pressure onto Angmar, but Angmar have got the tools to deal with that as well, with Wargs and Witch Realm Inquisitors, so you do need to be at the top of your game as Dol Amroth if you are to defeat Angmar. Again, a frontal charge could be what the Doctor ordered here. I think the Knights of Silver Swan are going to charge in. Indeed they are. They're going to head towards the Barrow Wights and try and flatten them. They are actually in wedge formation, which is not really all that necessary. Wedge formation, of course, will help you sort of crack through a formation should you need that. But that's very, very situational, wedge formation. They did manage to sort of bisect the Barrow Wights, but unfortunately this does mean, because he did use wedge, a lot of his unit models passed into the Barrow Wight unit. He probably will end up losing a couple of unit models as a result of that, especially with the arrow fire coming in as well. Never really been the biggest fan of wedge formation. I found a lot of the formations in Medieval 2, honestly, to not really be all that useful. Like shooting circle, I've never really found use for either, because it doesn't help you really mitigate any sort of damage. Here come the Riders of the Fold. We can also see the Aerid of Aldberg charging through the trees. These Lancers have got a sort of perfect sort of charge really on the Uruk-hai infantry, but the crossbows are coming in. But most of those crossbows actually miss. I think they were going for the Riders of the Fold and not the Aerid of Aldberg. There's some pretty snazzy cav play there, and that was a full frontal charge on the Uruk-hai infantry, several of their units falling away there, so the Uruk-hai crossbows focused too much on the riders of the fold. And the area of Aldberg able to charge in unopposed. They'll probably take a few losses now as they cycle back out, and the Dunlanding Berserkers are opening, but for the time being, still very much a skirmish-focused battle. We can see that there are some Helmingas over here as well for Rohan, the slightly stronger of the Rohirrim archers. And they will also be sort of trying to fire in, maybe trying to sort of chip away at these crossbows, but I don't really think it's going to work out too well. You can see the Goblin Archers of Korrigan also coming over to try and sort of help the Rohirrim out as they probe the enemy lines, but honestly I think the most aggression is going to come from up here. You can see the Barrow Wights are still moving forward. They're tanking these charges like champs, but the Knights of the Silver Swan, so far, they've had a pretty good battle. I mean, these Barrow Wights have not really been defended at all. They've been trying to sort of face tank these charges as best they can, which they've managed, to be fair. But the Knights of the Silver Swan doing what they can. They definitely need to stay away from the Witch Realm Inquisitors, mind you. The Nimrodale Rangers are over here. Witch Realm Inquisitors should be able... Oh dear, this however was probably not the best of ideas. The Swan Knights charging into the Trolls of Angmar. This is not the best engagement at all. The Witch Realm Inquisitors charging in there, so again that does speak to a bit of inexperience as well. Charging your Swan Knights headlong into a unit of very heavy trolls like the Trolls of Angmar is absolutely not what you want to be doing, because on the charge you may very well be able to kill a couple of trolls, maybe less so when it comes to a unit of melee cav like the Swan Knights, but over time the trolls, they're just going to be able to deal such a high level of damage. This is also another move which leads me to believe this is a very new player. Charging Knights of the Silver Swan again into the trolls but also into the Witch Realm Inquisitors is suicide. The Haven Knights, the Haven Knights would do better. They would sort of fight the Witch Realm Inquisitors to a standstill. With the trolls here, you don't want your cavalry anywhere near this. It's death. And already Dol Amroth is starting to look a little bit constricted up there on their hill. The Haven Knights are going to have to run away, and now the back lines are exposed. I mean, the Witch Realm Inquisitors and the Trolls of Angmar can basically do what they will to the back lines here of Dol Amroth. A bit too static. And it's all the hallmarks of a brand new player, which again, you can't really blame, everyone has to start somewhere, but even so, it's not looking good for Dol Amroth, which of course is going to mean elsewhere on the field the red team are going to have to do something, which it does look as though they are making that attempt now. We can see that the Orc Warg Riders from Orc Pion, the Isengard Wargs, charging into the Red Shield of Erkenbrand, the Red Shields as they are, as I'm just going to refer to them as, Horse Archer melee cav hybrids. They will actually put up a decent fight in melee. The Riders of the Fold are nearby as well. I think the problem the Warg Riders are having here is they're being hit by range damage. They're being just overwhelmed here. Usually the Wargs will actually do pretty well against the expensive red shields in terms of a cost-benefit analysis. You can see there's a lot of dead red shields on the floor after all. But ultimately the Wargs have just pursued the enemy too far and they're going to be swallowed whole, really, by all of these units. Not sure where the rest of the Rohirrim are. They're still hiding. The rest of Korrigan's army still sort of using those Goblin Archers to try and get as much value as they possibly can, trying to kill off what's left of this unit of Wargs, as Rohan actually falls back. The Isengard Ballista is over here again. I'm actually quite surprised that the Isengard Ballista is still firing at the Rohan forces. They're scattered enough. Looking at where Korrigan is sort of set up, that's absolutely where the Ballista needs to be used. But up here is where the majority of the excitement is happening for now. As you can see here, the Nimrodale Rangers are now being targeted by all of the Goblin Archers, or the Goblin Trackers I should say. And the Rangers, of course, not the best at taking range pressure. You can see here the Warg Riders also charging into the Tirithea Marksmen. At this point, Dol Amroth are being forced into sort of a bit of tactical geometry almost here. They're sort of trying to cover every angle, form up a bit of a box with their infantry. They're just not able to cover every angle here, and unfortunately for them as well, from the front, they just aren't going to be able to withstand an onslaught from Angmar. The Barrow Wights are going to get in, engage them, and then all of the Halberds, all of the Guardians of Kharn Dûm are going to come forward and they're going to split the line wide open. As Dol Amroth, you really need to be using your archers and your cavalry to their full effect if you're going to try and take on Angmar. And unfortunately for them, that has not gone too well for them thus far. You can see over here as well, the Witch Realm Inquisitors, they did charge into the Wargs, but now the Wargs and the Witch Realm Inquisitors are combining their efforts. And this may very well be the end of the mighty Haven Knights. The Witch Realm Inquisitors are pretty much the only other unit of this type in 0.96. There will be a couple of others like the Alcarondas Faithful coming in 0.97, but for the time being, melee Knights, they are the only two. Tirithea Wardens are trying to get in there to support, but the Trolls are coming in. The Trolls will do a lot of damage. to Tirithea Wardens. They're going to be swinging their machetes. The Angmar halberds are coming in. The front line fight is now joined. As you can see, the Witch Realm pikemen are getting in here, as well as the Barrow Wights. They're trying to get in as close as possible. You can see the arrow fire coming in here, going for the Rangers, but also getting the odd hit on the Dora and Ernil pikemen as well as Angmar comes forward. It's not actually the heaviest of Angmar advances, to be fair. And you can see now coming over here the Hashari Shadows and the Serpent Guard. So fair play to the Harad player. He sort of noticed how much Dol Amroth was struggling over here. And again, to be fair, if you don't come up and sort of do something about this, Angmar is going to have a pretty healthy army to come by and start putting pressure on your flanks with. So you need to do something, whether that's to try and advance yourself down on the other section of the battlefield, or coming to aid Dol Amroth. So it's good to see the players being proactive here. You can see over here the Dol Amroth frontline trying to hold back the onslaught from Angmar, but unfortunately again, like, the front line was too narrow. Angmar were always just going to be able to go around the vast majority of it, engaging on the front with the Barrow Wights, then heading up round the flanks with the heavy infantry like the Guardians of Kharn was always going to be a winning proposition here. The Haven Guard back here are doing some damage actually. They managed to kill off the Trolls. The Knights of the Silver Swan also managed to get out of there, and they are going to get a nice charge here into the Guardians of Kharn. So Angmar is not getting all of this damage done for free. Dol Amroth is fighting, and the Hashari Shadows are in a fantastic position to shoot right along the Angmar lines. They're definitely going to be taking more and more damage. However, the Witch Realm Inquisitors are over here now, still 11 of them surviving after being closed in on by those Tirithea Wardens. Still a few Trolls up here, so to be fair, Dol Amroth actually still not doing too badly. The Haven Knights are over here. They want to get out of melee with the Witch Realm Hammer Guard, however. That's not a good engagement for them at all. Let's go and see what else is happening down here. The Champions of the White Hand, not too surprised to see them, but they're immediately sort of being poked away by the ranged units from Rohan. Helmingas are over here as well. It certainly looks like a very ranged approach from Rohan. In which case, my sort of query as to why Isengard and Harad are not being much more aggressive will hold true. Because they're essentially playing right into Rohan and the Misty Mountains' hands if they just sort of sit back here and try and skirmish with them. Especially seeing as up here, you would imagine that eventually this pressure from Angmar will probably tell. You can see the pipeline is already starting to buckle. You can see the Trolls are getting in and amongst the Rangers. The Spearmen are coming over here to sort of try and put an end to this, but I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. You can see down here as well that still the Knights of the Silver Swan doing their best, and they've actually done very well in this battle. Traditionally, they're actually a pretty difficult unit to get a good sort of cost-effectiveness ratio with them. But that's not the case here. They have managed to charge into a good few units, do a good amount of damage overall. Unfortunately, however, I don't think it's going to be enough. You can see here the Serpent Guard are over here, the Witch King himself with his sword, able to sort of catch up to the Serpent Guard. The Serpent Guard trying to kill off some Goblin Trackers. A very soft and squishy target indeed, and the Serpent Guard are very fast. They should be able to sort of outrun the Witch Realm Inquisitors. There's only 3 of them left actually, which indicates to me that they were probably shot by the Hashari Shadows as they cycled out. Nice, the Silver Swan over here as well. As this fight continues, Dol Amroth are getting weaker and weaker, and you can see here that the line is going to be worked up as well. The Witch Realm Hammer Guard sort of pressuring the Haven Guard from the side. The Haven Guard may very well be able to go toe to toe with the Hammer Guard in a vacuum, but when they've got all of the Guardians of Kharn with the Halberds in support as well, it's not going to go well for them. Snaga Stalkers also working up around the flanks. Yep, more pressure. If we have a look. Serpent Guard actually getting a decent rear charge, however, into the front line. The only problem there is that they took a huge amount of casualties when the pikes turned around. But at the very least, it's buying Dol Amroth time, and it is killing off more of the Angmar army, which at this point is somewhat of an inevitability that they're going to be heading down the hill and towards Isengard. If the Champions of the White Hand had been sent up here as well, with how passive Rohan and the Misty Mountains are being, who knows? Dol Amroth may have even been able to pull out the win here. The Snaga Stalkers are just back here getting in the way. You can see there are also some Witch Realm Hammer Guard coming over here trying to finish off what's left of the cavalry. The Tirithea Wardens trying to turn around to answer this challenge from the Snaga. But they were shaken for a little while there, pulling themselves off the front line, incurring a bit of a morale penalty there. The Ballista crew must be feeling the heat at this point. A very thin line of infantry in places now is all that's defending them. I think they're going to be sent into melee against the Hammer Guard, which you will scarcely see a more one-sided fight. The Snaga are over here as well, of course. Guardians of Kharn. Yeah, I mean, at this point Angmar really is tightening the noose. Very much a last stand on the hilltop at this stage. No more cavalry for Dol Amroth. I don't know where the Serpent Guard has gone. There they are. And they are going to get another charge in. As we sort of poke through the trees. They want to cycle out as quickly as they possibly can, however. They did get some kills on the Barrow Wights, but they don't want to stick around for the Witch Realm Pikemen to poke them to death. Let's go and see what's happening over here. More Riders of the Fold coming in to apply some pressure. The Helmingas coming back as well to try and poke away at the Uruk-hai crossbows. And again, I think the Orc Peon as well, maybe there's a little bit of a new player syndrome going on here as well, because it's very clear that he wants to sit back and skirmish, but he hasn't brought any archers. Even though Uruk-hai archers are not great, you still need archers if you're going to get into a skirmish fight like this, because the Orc crossbows, well, the Uruk-hai crossbows I should say, simply don't have the range, and they're just being poked and prodded at range by the Rohan archers, and it's very easy for the Rohan player at this point to just sort of go in. The Rise of the Fold do break. They got far too close to the champions to White Hand, so that was maybe a little bit too gung-ho of him. But yeah, based on the, because I also saw Eowyn's Shield Maidens in the hidden in the grass as well. Obviously, Corrigan, as always, is going for a very passive sort of wave-based build. So it does surprise me a little bit that Harad and Isengard have been so accommodating. New player is someone that I have seen play the game before, so again, it does surprise me a little bit here that Harad are not being more aggressive. Harad are an aggressive faction at heart, and with all of that AP, which is just not going to be useful against Harad, I'm surprised that the melee engagement is not being forced a little bit more readily here. Meanwhile, the Tirithea Wardens sort of fighting to the last, but again, it's not looking good for the forces of Dol Amroth here. They have been enveloped. And again, for a new player to try and play as one of, in 0.96, most underwhelming factions in Dol Amroth, and having to face off against the brute strength of Angmar as they do come forward, even if Lister was a little bit slower than Angmar usually are at closing the gap, it was always going to be difficult. You can see that there's still several Barrow Wights as well. A couple of Haven Knights. The Serpent Guard are going to come in here, try and get a nice charge off on the Snaga, try and do what damage where they can. There are some halberds in there as well, however, so the Serpent Guard definitely need to cycle out of there as quickly as they are able. Still, these Tirithea Wardens will sort of sit quite happily on this hilltop and hold for some time yet. We're more or less actually at the halfway point here, and you can see that the blue team have certainly pulled out a bit of an advantage thus far. Still the Dol Amroth Warhorns blare, trying to kill off just what they can to try and give their allies the best chance of winning. Which again, if Rohan and the Misty Mountains run out of... Again, this is a very strange thing that Corrigan likes to do. He sort of put his Goblin Infantry right in front. They're already shaken. I mean, again, I'm really confused as to why the Haradrim player is not being more aggressive. This is a freebie pretty much at this point. They're already shaken. Even these Haradrim Spearmen, if they move forward, would be sufficient to break them off. And even if you don't intend to move, you can just sort of move forward, break them, and then get back into position. It's not like he's moved forward his entire infantry force waiting for you to move. So yeah, very, 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 very strange. I feel as though so far this battle is basically an advertisement for why you should be aggressive and not just sort of sit and wait for your opponents to sort of run out of ammunition. Again, there is a time and a place for skirmishing and being more passive. For the red team, however, this is not that battle. You know, all the while that Isengard and Harad have just been staring at the enemy. You know, they did send some support up. Harad did send some support up for Dol Amroth, but it was always going to be a losing proposition up here. They needed to be more proactive down at the bottom of the hill, I think, and time is running out for them now because Angmar are going to be moving across the field. The Barrow Wights will take an eternity to get there, but the rest of the army won't. And the clock is ticking now, I think. As soon as Angmar get into position to start attacking the Uruk-hai from the sides, it's going to be bad news. So what will the red team do, is my question. Here we go. That's a little bit more like it. The Goblin Archers getting a little bit too close. The Goblin Infantry immediately routing, of course, and now the Goblin Archers sort of trying to retreat back to their lines. Again, the Haradrim Spearmen don't need to chase them all the way, but just sort of to let you know that, you know, I am still at my keyboard. You're not going to be able to just sit in front of me at point blank and start shooting me. Meanwhile, Riders of the Fold still putting on some range pressure. The Southron Archers, we can see here a shooting circle, which again, I've never personally found to be all that worth it from sort of attacking point of view with the Horse Archers sort of shooting or keeping them alive. It doesn't really work in my experience anyway, purely because the surface area is still there for the archers to hit. They may be aiming for one unit model and hitting another, but they're still hitting something. So ultimately it doesn't really matter from their point of view. as the Riders of Fold continue sort of again just poke away at Isengard. There's still those Sons of Yule in the background as well, the Bolgs champions still in reserve as we head into the final 10,000 frames. The Red Shields of course took a little bit of a beating at the hands of those Isengard wargs. But we shall see how this battle goes as it sort of enters. You can see the Dunlending Berserkers as well, so this is, you know, again, 007 is doing a good job at shooting down the targets that are a little bit, and I should say Corrigan is also doing a good job at sort of picking and choosing their targets. There goes Imrahil at the hands of all of those Guardians of Kharndoon. Going after the Dunlending Berserkers, of course they've got very light armour, no shields, very, very good target for archers. Good damage as well, relatively speaking, for how cheap they are. So it certainly makes a lot of sense that they would go after them. Harad are now starting to move forward, and I think this might be it. I think Harad has decided that Angmar are on the way. We need to do something here. And now they're sort of starting to pour forwards with their infantry. And again, Harad should have the better of this engagement, honestly. The crossbows are the concern, because they're in such a good position to shoot. But from a pure melee perspective, I mean, heavy goblin spears, their big selling point is that they're AP. That's not going to be very useful against this Harad army. Even one that has more Serpent Guard than average. And again, the halberds are not going to be particularly useful either. You can see over here, Aeryd of Aldberg are moving forwards, but they're going to charge into spears. They did manage to get up to charge speed, which means they are going to be able to do a huge amount of damage there. I thought they were just going to sort of run into the spears then, unthinkingly, but they did manage to get the charge off, which is good for them. So obviously that is a big charge bonus that they have. And Rohan are now going to be able to move forward, so it's now or never for Isengard. Isengard need to move forward in support of their ally, because if they don't, Rohan are going to be able to send over some individual units like this to sort of start doing damage to pretty important units to Harad at this point in the dismounted Serpent Guard. And of course Corrigan, all Corrigan needs to do now is just hold the line and sort of allow Rohan to come and support them. Stuff like the Sons of Yule would be devastating for Harad right now. Good to see that Isengard are moving forward with supporting units, however, champions to White Hand. If Rohan have gone too skirmish heavy, then they won't be able to send all that much other than the Lancers. There are the Eowyn Shield Maidens, who of course at this point in time are still AP. The damage is the main thing, however, and they're actually throwing their axes at, I think, Haradrim Spearmen, which is not ideal. Here come the Riddermark Axemen. As you know, those aren't Riddermark Axemen, those are Sons of Yule. Let's say Riddermark Axemen are hidden, however, so good to see Rohan does have some infantry, and it's not all archers. And here we go, the second line fight of the battle. Previously, the very aggressive faction did end up winning. The Misty Mountains have sort of taken up a very intelligent place here on the hill, so this is obviously going to mean that fatigue is going to set in for Harad more quickly. However, it is a very static line. You can see here already Haradrim Spearmen are starting to get in and around the flank. I think they are going to be hit by heavy goblin crossbows, who are already shaken after all. But they could try and take advantage of the low Misty Mountains morale. You can see the Demons of the Desert are coming in. It's a very thick front line, this, of goblins, but with the proper range support, Harad shouldn't have too much of an issue getting through it. The spears themselves, after all, the AP not going to be all that handy. Haradrim Spearmen are moving forward. They are going to be able to get into melee with the Snaga skirmishers as well, although the Blackback Berserkers are on the way, which is most unfortunate from a Harad perspective, because these Haradrim Spearmen are going to stand no chance at all against Blackbacks. Blackbacks are getting shot, however, by enemy archers. It's Ashari Stalkers as well, which is exactly the sort of thing which is going to be able to do a good amount of damage here. So I'm glad to see they are here and doing damage. The problem, however, is that now getting attacked from the side. You can see that Angmar has wasted no time charging down the hill. A lot of their army is tired at this point, as the announcer just said, but they are putting pressure on Isengard from the flank. So Isengard at this point could end up being double teamed. The Uruk-hai Berserkers are on the front line again, fighting a fight they should win, but Isengard are being stretched here. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Rohan are not being a little bit more proactive in trying to... Well, actually they are over on this side, to be fair. The Sons of Yule putting a lot of pressure here on the Isengard front line, doing huge damage to the Uruk-hai infantry. Also the Aeryd of Aldberg charging in here as well. The Uruk-hai infantry has really done nothing so far other than accept charges from the Rohirrim cavalry, making Theoden proud. And again, that's going to be another nice charge there into a healthier unit of Uruk-hai infantry as well, and they're going to take some pretty substantial losses from that. So again, this is good news. All the while Angmar is putting pressure on the flank, so really this puts all the emphasis on Harad. Harad need to win against the Misty Mountains, and they need to win well. And they are doing so, to be fair. Over on this side, they're doing exactly what they need to be. Blackback Berserkers are the target of most of the enemy skirmishes. The halberds are not really proving to be all that useful. The javelins are going after the key units, and they're starting to work their way up the line. Heavy goblin spears taking huge damage there from the demons of the desert, and of course that is enough to break them instantly. So Corrigan's front line, he does like a layered defence, does Corrigan, and in this case it has backfired pretty drastically. This Harad force has been exactly what they need, and again, I'm surprised that Harad did not do this sooner. If they had, and Isengard wasn't currently being sort of probed on both sides by both Rohan and Isengard, I would say that this was dead even with how Dol Amroth died to Angmar. But as it is, still some Trollmen in reserve as well. Crossbows, I think, yeah, they're going after the Trollmen. There are more immediate problems, however. The Blackbacks are still the target of all of those skirmishes. The Haradrim Spearmen are here. The Serpent Guard forming up that solid front line is very handy. The front line is now breaking in all sorts of places. The Heavy Goblin Spears are running for the hills. Let's go and see what's happening over here. The Sons of Yore getting a very nice rear charge into the Dunlending Berserkers. Yes, indeed. I keep meaning to mark or disable the in-game interface when I do recordings. I really should. Very unprofessional of me to have my friends list popping up every time I do these recordings now. But the Sons of Yore getting a nice charge there, flattening those Dunlenders. You see here the Snaga going up against the Dunlending Clansmen, a duel of the low tier units, which if the Snaga were in good condition they might win, but as it is, obviously they're wavering, they're exhausted. With the Sons of Yore supporting them, however, that they probably will win actually, because the Sons of Yore are going to be able to absolutely dumpster Dunlending Clansmen by shooting them in the back. They do manage to kill off a couple of those unit models, however. That heightened anti-cavalry bonus the Dunlenders give you really coming in clutch there. Uruk-hai crossbows pursuing something. They should probably concern themselves a little bit more with the Witch Realm Hammer Guard that are right on their doorstep. I am surprised that Rohan is still so passive. I would have thought they'd come forward to help Angmar crush Isengard. The Misty Mountains are sort of still cycling backwards. Several of these halberds are still in reserve.
If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
Corrigan doing his thing again. But his army is slowly being chewed up really by Harad. There's only so much of this that they're going to be able to take. You can see here the White Uruk Fearmongers are over here trying to form up a front line. But they are being hit from two sides. So that is going to be something that works in Harad's favour. The AP, of course, on the Muhad Berserkers as well. Some routing heavy goblin halberds as well. So again, if they can get on the crossbows, Harad should be golden. They shouldn't have too much to worry about. There are Dunlending Berserkers coming over here in support as well. One problem that Harad do have, of course, is the fact they are having to sort of leave some units in reserve to make sure that Rohan can't hit them in the back. Some Southron, and they are committing everything for here, Harad. The Eowyn shield mains are here in place as well, helping the filthy goblins for once.
They have lost half their
They're going to have to run because the Muhad Beast Hunters and the Dismounted Serpent Guard are on the way. One of the units of reserve heavy goblin halberds is marching forwards. Blackback Mountain Berserkers are getting back into play now, which is good, because they were being shot, so they were pulled back, and now that they're in a position where they can't be shot so easily, they're charging back in, and they will, of course, rip and tear their way through Haradrim Spearmen with impunity, really. Not really much that low-tier spears are going to be able to do in return.
The battle is very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
Well, these Goblin Archers, this is going to be another section of the battlefield that's probably going to be breaking. The Demons of the Desert getting in position potentially to unleash another volley from hell. The Goblin Archers are also being cut down or bashed down by the Muhad Beast Hunters with their maces. And those Riddermark Spearmen, pretty much the only unit of Rohan infantry I've seen in melee so far, are sent routing by the advancing Harad forces. Dunlending Clansmen being cycled across as well. Still Rohan being a little bit more passive. The Bolgs Champions are starting to come forward now, so that is another unit that Corrigan has had in reserve. Here come the Dunlending Clansmen, a charge. Again though, I mean, Dunlending Clansmen will be able to kill off a few unit models of them, so they definitely need to be careful. The Bolg Champions sort of waiting their turn. Isengard are moving over here now. They've had to leave a few units behind, however. They're using their Champions of the White Hand, which is good. I don't think Angmar actually have an answer to the Champions of the White Hand at this point. And that's actually pretty good for Isengard, because if they can use their Champions of the White Hand to cycle charge Angmar into oblivion, maybe all is not lost. All is not lost yet. Blue team are still winning, but We'll see how long that lasts. I mean, the Riddermark Axemen are charging forward. Here are the heavy Goblin Crossmen, but they are actually engaged in melee by the Dunlander Clansmen. With the Riddermark Axemen so close by, the Dunlanders will probably get destroyed, but still, stopping those crossbows from firing is the key here. Heavy Goblin Halberds taking a little bit of range fire as well. There's more Riddermark Spears. Goddamn, this playstyle from the Misty Mountains and Rohan together, it's one of the... I'm frustrated just watching it, let alone playing against it. That would be awful. The Eowyn Shield Maidens doing a lot of damage, and again, these Demons of the Desert exposing themselves to the Shield Maidens is not good for them. They must have used up all their ammunition already, but I feel like Harad's attack at this point is running out of steam. Individual mistakes like that are the sort of things which... that's going to be the last hope really gone. Harad breaking Harad was through, and there's still a lot of Harad units. There's still the Trollman. Some Wuhad warriors as well getting in here to the Heavy Goblin Archers. Sort of layered defence, which is... I guess there's method in the madness, I suppose. Bolg's champions cycling out of there. They need to be careful. I mean, you can get stuck on all sorts when you're not sort of paying attention to where you're charging. You could end up charging into a unit of pikes. Here come the Riddermark Axemen. It's always good to see the Rohan Axemen able to get into melee before they get shot up by arrows or javelins. And they should be just fine here. Southron pikes, they're getting in here, doing damage with their axes. Should be enough to break the Southrons, to be honest. The rest of the Isengard force, however, it is only Barrow Whites that are left, really. The champions of the White Hand need to cycle out, but I think, honestly, Isengard... it's a lot of Barrow Whites. It's a lot of Barrow Whites, but personally, I think they should probably win this. They can just cycle in and out with the champions of the White Hand with impunity, really, but the problem is over here. I just don't think Harad and the rest of Isengard's infantry force has got what it takes to actually win this fight anymore.
The battle is very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
The White Uruk Fearmongers are still standing. The Demons of the Desert are here. A few units over here, Dunlanding Berserkers, along with the rest of the Harad infantry. I don't know though. Quite a few Muhad warriors. These Heavy Goblin Halberds will break at some point in the very near future if they're being attacked in the side in this manner. And there's still some in reserve. There's still arrows flying all over the place from both sides, I think. Indeed, well, bolts, I suppose. Crossbow bolts. Hashari Stalkers getting into melee alongside Uruk-hai crossbows. The Riddermark Axemen doing their thing. Cleaving skulls with those big two-handed battle axes. They're doing well for themselves. This Rohan infantry has done very, very well for itself. Wuhad Berserkers, they're wavering. Not really feeling the stomach for the fight anymore, I don't think. That, I think, was actually... yes, it was. It was the Isengard General. I thought that might have been the Rohan General for a second, and in the Sons of Yule, but it wasn't. It was the Isengard one. Some Meduseld Guard over here as well. Meduseld Guard, not something you see a great deal of. Very, very potent units indeed. I do want to show Rohan in 0.97 to be honest with you, because the unit upgrades they've got, or the sort of the overhaul they've got visually looks so good. Units like the Westmark Marshals looking very, very nice indeed. The Riddermark Axemen, however, are coming forward. Yeah, and this I think is the point when the Harad army is going to start to fall apart. They simply don't have the morale to hold themselves together. The Trollmen are getting to the front line far too late. They probably should have been committed forward earlier. Finding those gaps, getting in there. Yeah, and you can see that Corrigan still has too much left. This sort of weird, staggered retreat with layers that he often traffics in. It's a very, very strange way of playing the game, to be honest with you, but I mean, it does work, especially on newer players, I've noticed. It certainly seems to work. Meanwhile, Riddermark Spearmen are victorious. The Meduseld Guard are coming in here now. Finally going to be able to use up some of their ammunition at the very least. As we get into the closing stages of this fight. Fire arrows zooming in as well. I gotta be honest with you, this one wasn't very close. The implication from the message that I got was that this one would be close, and it hasn't really been that close at all. The way the wind was blowing throughout the entire battle was very clear in one direction, but there was good reasons for that. I will still show this for reasons that I will explain in the results screen. The Riddermark Axemen are over here. doing the business against the demons of the desert. And there goes the Haradrim General. Riddermark Axemen have been pretty important here in this sort of late game effort to quickly tidy up what remains of the Haradrim forces. A lot of AP up against Harad today, but usually they can deal with that quite nicely. But it was the numbers, it was the positioning. A new player did very well actually initially to sort of break the initial front line, but it's a very unique way of playing, we'll call it, that Koregan has. I'd be so frustrated. I'd be frustrated to play against it, to be honest with you. As a and players who have played the game for sort of a more extended length of time will know how to sort of wear down the sort of tactics that Koregan often uses, but it's not fun to play against at all. It's so frustrating. Just to watch it, I can feel myself getting frustrated. So to play against it, oof, frightful. But you can see the Ancient Maids are pursuing something. Not sure what that is, however. The Bulk Champions are coming in. Shotman of Harad. Defeat seems certain. Plenty amount of time before they fall away, although I don't think they will actually break. Bulk Champions are charging in, although I say charging in, that didn't really get up to charge speed there. The Heavy Goblin Halberds pinning them in from the front. The most exciting hammer and anvil I've ever seen. But this is going to be the final fling for the match, and the blue team are going to be victorious, of course. The reason for that, I feel like, the red team were just too passive in a situation where they did not need to be. Dol Amroth, of course, aside, because Dol Amroth against Angmar is one of those rough matchups, I think, of 0.96. Dol Amroth will have much more of an ability to fight against that sort of thing in the upcoming patch, where their cavalry has been made a little bit more well-rounded, as it should be. They've got arguably the strongest of all the Western Kingdom's cavalry, other than, arguably, again, Rohan. Arthur Dane have also got a strong force. But yeah, I mean, I feel as though with Rohan and the Misty Mountains, it was definitely a frustrating sort of affair for both Harad and Isengard, but I feel as though both Harad and Isengard, what they wanted to do was they wanted to be more passive, and they couldn't afford to be. They just could not afford to be. Rohan and Misty Mountains basically bought the right to be more passive by investing more in their skirmishes, and eventually Harad seemed to get the memo and they charged forward, and they ended up getting the most kills on the map for it. You only have to look at how many men Koregan brought to see what sort of army he was going for. Harad obviously going for the quantity approach as well. But as soon as Harad charged forward, they did a good amount of damage to the Misty Mountains. If they'd done that sooner, when Isengard wasn't being pressured from every angle, with Angmar charging down the hill with the Rohan cavalry, and them having to sort of also try and support Harad, if they had charged forward more quickly, I don't think they've realised how little infantry Rohan actually had in this fight. Rohan pretty much went for the maximum amount of skirmishes they get away with. They didn't have any Riddermark archers, but other than that, they have pretty much all of Rohan's ranged units, including the Meduseld Guard. So I feel as though if Isengard and Harad had been more aggressive from the outset, and again, they're both factions that have the ability to zone out Cav and Wargs. They don't need to be scared of Rohan Cav getting in behind them. They've got crossbows, they've got spears of all sorts. Both factions have got the ability to sort of do that. So yeah, I feel as though that was where the blue team ultimately won. In the end, Angmar against Dol Amroth at the top it went in much the way I thought it was going to go. And Angmar did put the pressure on Isengard in the late game, but the real battle was won and lost, I think. Rohan and the Misty Mountains versus Harad and Isengard, and the blue team managed to come out on top of that. So let's have a look at what did the damage for Angmar, nonetheless. The Hammer Guard getting a lot of kills, obviously. Getting the most kills, in fact. Getting in there against the Dol Amroth infantry, and then also later on doing more damage to the Isengard forces as well. Quite a lot of units breaking 100 kills also. So yeah, my voice is starting to abandon me, and I think also, unfortunately, my sort of audio input for my tower is starting to give up as well, which is also super annoying. At several points in that battle, the audio started to dip for me. That won't be the case when I upload it, but even so, it was kind of annoying. But I will show this because it just shows the dangers of being too passive when you haven't got the right to be passive. If you want to be passive, you've got to bring the skirmishes to do that. And I don't think Harad and Isengard did that. So more of an educational video this in what not to do, I think. It may be frustrating to come up against Misty Mountains and Rohan compositions like this, as both of those armies can do. Obviously, kiting armies for Rohan is something I certainly don't approve of. But it is a valid way to play. As much as it may annoy me and several other people, it is a valid way to play. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Next up, I think we will be getting back to sort of a more set-piece battle. Hopefully the next one will be close as well. I was actually led to believe that this battle would be closer than it ended up being. based on the PM that I received, so I'm maybe a little bit disappointed about that. But again, still a valid reason to show it. So I think the next one, I have got a few sieges that I can get through. I also have a couple of things on 0.97 that I can show as well. But again, I think another set piece battle is what will probably what people will probably want to see after this one in particular. So we might be sort of returning to Tol Falas, maybe return to Rivendell, maybe to the Grey Havens. I do have another Minas Tirith battle I could do. Let me know. You know, I'm willing to sort of take sort of guidance on this. So I've got a few. I've even got Thranduil's Halls as well, and that may be the last time we see the old Thranduil's Halls. As much as I've shown it, it might be the last time we see it, because it is going to be given an updated version in the upcoming 0.97. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.